yes, I am Dr. Leigh Davidson. I am the founder of Your Vet Online, and this is a company that I founded because I love helping you guys. Essentially, we provide 24/7 service, so we answer your questions. Well, first of all, we're actually a group of veterinarians, and basically, if you have a question that you want answered, then we help you. You can head over to our website and book a consult anytime, day or night. Doesn't matter what kind of animal you've got, we can help you. Anyway, let's get on with what we're going to be talking about today. Now, today's little chat is going to be all about the timing of when we de-sex our pets. Now, if you're anything like me, this is a huge question to ask at the moment. There are so many people out there who have a lot of different opinions, and that includes vets. Sometimes us vets, we don't necessarily agree on things. The research can all be a little bit all over the place, and sometimes we just do stuff because that's always the way it's been. So what exactly is the best timing to de-sex your pets? And if you've got any questions, please pop them in the links below, and hopefully I'll be able to work the software. I haven't done this for a while, so of course sometimes software glitches might occur. I'm hoping that I'll be able to see your questions. Maybe if you just pop a hello in there, I'll see if I've got anybody actually in. Yes, it doesn't. It's funny. I don't know if anyone's watching or anything. So if you're there, please pop a little note in to say hello. As I said, if you've got any questions, put them down in the comment section. Hopefully, I will be able to see that. Oh, yay, Donna. Hi. Good. At least I know this is working because, yes, as I said, new technology this time. So not quite sure how it all works, especially with as I said, if you've got any questions, oops. That is obviously working on YouTube, so that's awesome. All right, well, we'll get to it then. As I said, today's conversation is going to be all around timing of de-sexing with regards to your dogs. We won't talk about cats today, but if you've got a question and you're wondering about cats, just pop it in the little section below and I'll answer it as well. But this is mainly focused on dogs. And I guess the reason why I thought this is a good topic to start with is because there are so many people with so many different opinions, and the research has kind of been a little bit iffy, but thankfully we actually do have some good research now. And yay, we've also got some more questions here. That's great. I can see them. So what I might actually do is I'll head through and just discuss what we're going to talk about in the tutorial. Then I'll do the questions at the end, just so that I'm not, looking and getting all worried all the time about that. Again, I haven't done this for a while, so we're out of practice. Yes, so I'll answer the questions at the end. Remember, this is always going to come back and you can look at it at any time. So if you need to leave for any reason, whether you're at work or something, then please just pop back and I'll make sure I answer your questions. All right, if you haven't met me before, I'm Dr. Leigh Davidson, and I've been a vet for 20 years. So I've worked on horses, I've worked on cats and dogs, I've worked in GP practice, I've worked in specialist hospitals. So I've kind of been around the traps just a little bit. Let's get to it then, shall we? Before we get too far ahead, I just want to cover some terms because there's a lot of terminology related to de-sexing, and depending on where you live and some of the names of things can be completely different. So just thought I'd touch on this. Now, if we're talking about spaying, it can be spaying with an A, spaying with an E, and basically spaying is usually the term we give to female dogs. Neutering is a term we give to male dogs, but it can also mean removing those, not only testicles, but it can also mean removing ovaries. So remember, females have ovaries, males have testicles. So we can use the term neutering and desexing to refer to both. Spaying is generally referred to just for females only. And basically, some people might even call it gonadectomy. So that is actually just removal of the gonads, and the gonads are the sexual organs again. So we're talking about ovaries and our testicles. The other thing you might hear talked about a little bit is if your female is in season, or perhaps she might even be in heat. Now that means that's her cycle. So that is generally referring to the period of time when your female is actually sexually receptive to a male and she can become pregnant. So always a good idea to understand that one. And when we talk about puberty, we're talking about that time in your dog's life when they become sexually mature. And for a lot of dogs, if they're small, so when I talk about small breed dogs, I'm also often talking about those dogs that are 15 kgs or less. They are often those ones that become sexually mature quite quickly. And then it kind of increases as the dogs get bigger. So Labradors, dogs like that, so they're in that sort of 20 to 30 kg range. They might be closer to a year old when they become sexually mature. Big giant breeds like Great Danes, our St. Bernards, those sorts of dogs, they often become sexually mature quite a lot later. So often not until they're about 2 years old, sort of some of them 18 months to 2 years. So it's always worthwhile just keeping that at the back of your mind if you're thinking about timing of desexing, because a lot of it is actually related to the timing of when your dog actually becomes sexually mature. Okay, why desex your dog? Okay, there's so many reasons, and I'm sure you've probably heard them all before, but primarily it's to stop unwanted litters. And we all know that having pups is great. It's lots of fun. It's also a lot of work. And and when I say it's a lot of work, we've got to be careful that we're actually breeding an animal that A, we can find a home for, B, we're not breeding just to make money and forgetting about all those health issues that some dogs might have. So there's a lot of genetic issues that many dogs have. Probably a big one that a lot of you can associate is with that horrible, nasty arthritis called hip dysplasia. That has a really high heritability. And if you choose a dog that is prone to that, like our Labradors, our Golden Retrievers, our German Shepherds, then we've got to look at the breeding lines and make sure that we're breeding animals that are fit for purpose, and we're not exacerbating any diseases that they might have or genetic problems like hip dysplasia that they might have later on down the track. All right, so another thing, let's not forget, if you've got a desex pet, it's cheaper. It's the council registrations and all that sort of thing are a lot cheaper, so that's always very handy. And then there's some things, sometimes non-desexed dogs in particular, they can be females and males, sometimes have increased aggression related to their sex. So it's not that they're an aggressive breed, like keeping them entire is going to make them aggressive. But sometimes when they're put in a situation, their behavior may actually change. So remember, male dogs, very territorial. Female dogs can be a little bit like that too. And also when a female is on heat, sometimes she's not that great and she can be a little bit funny with other females, and that can be painful. And of course, male dogs with that extra bit of testosterone can be potentially, if there's a fight, they might not quite let it go like we all want them to. So it's not necessarily that it causes aggression, but it may just exacerbate it sometimes. Now, I just want to note that once a dog is actually showing signs of things like aggression, often we don't castrating them or neutering them won't actually sometimes fix the problem, because they develop that and they've got that behaviour in their psyche. So we'll have a chat about that in another tutorial, I think, because it's quite interesting. All right, what else? Let's not forget all the health benefits. And now this is where this research really comes into play, because if we're talking about, say, female dogs, don't forget that when we have, and I might just make sure I read this because it's pretty important, and I don't want to get it wrong, because sometimes just, when you're going live, sometimes you can say things a little bit wrong. But just remember, so if we're talking about females, when we desex a female before she has her first heat cycle, we have a lot higher we actually protect them against memory neoplasia or memory cancer. Now, memory cancer these days is a very treatable disease. So I will say that straight off. We can remove their memory glands. If we notice that there's a little lump in there, if we get it nice and early, it's curative, and we're not getting the same sorts of problems that we might have with human memory cancer. So that's not to say that if you've left it too long that you're not going to maybe have issues, because it, just like human memory cancer, it does spread to the lungs. But if we get it before that, then it's not the end of the world. If for want of a better word. Sorry, I thought my computer had just died then. It was just the screen. Now, when memory cancer is in high risk breeds, so we're talking about breeds that are like golden retrievers, that sort of breed, that are high risk cancer breeds, it's about 50% of the total canine neoplasia that is out there. So it's quite high in prevalence. Now, if we are to desex your female before she has her first heat, and for many animals that's going to be around that 6 months of age, they have such a tiny risk of getting memory cancer later in life. It's down to about 0.05%. Now, if we were to wait and actually spay her after her first heat, and then before her second heat cycle, then this risk actually increases to 8%. And then between the second and third heat cycle, the risk of getting mammary cancer in the rest of her life actually increases to 26%. So that's why you'll often hear a lot of vets and a lot of people say, the risk of mammary cancer is really high if you don't spay your dog before their first heat cycle. However, this is when, and we're going to go into this when we start talking about the research, and we'll go into it in a bit more depth. But just remember, mammary cancer is not a death sentence anymore. It's if you are checking your dog every day, not every day, but if you're on top of things, knowing that if you choose to wait to spay your female dog, then it's a good idea to be checking her mammary glands weekly, just having a good feel. You basically just feel down the sides of her mammary glands. Make sure that you are making sure that you're making sure that if you find any lumps, that you're going to the vet and you're getting her examined, they're taking a fine needle aspirate and they're acting on it when those things are found. Now, you've also got to remember that dogs that are not spayed, female dogs, they're also more prone to getting pyometra. And I think that off the top of my head, and I'll have to double check this, but I'm pretty sure it's about 25% of female dogs will get pyometra at some stage in their life if they're not desexed. Now, does that mean pyometra needs to have, if it's a 100% death sentence? Not at all. But when it happens and it's bad and then you've got a closed pyometra, and I'll just say, I just realized some of you might not know what pyometra is. Pyometra is when the uterus is infected, gets completely full of pus. It's really gross. And basically we need to take that out because it's causes huge illness in your dog. They get what we call sepsis. It means that basically they've got an internal infection, really horrible thing. And we need to get that out ASAP. The sad thing about this is it actually makes them really, really sick, and it's an expensive surgery, and your dog can potentially die. So when I say that a lot of dogs get pyometras, not all of them get to that stage, but when they do, it's quite devastating. What else have we got here on my little list of things? Okay. Also, we've got to talk about the boys. So not castrating them and removing their testicles can actually lead to things like prostatic disease. So often just with the hormones, they get a very enlarged prostate. And while cancer isn't quite, the correlation there with prostatic cancer is not quite the same, often with these dogs, they actually just get this really big, nasty prostate. It causes a lot of problems with urination. They often abscess. They often become very sick. So again, we need to remove those. And I'd have to say it's actually pretty common. Like, I have seen a lot of very sick male dogs because of this. The other thing is that they can get testicular cancer. And that's, again, quite a nasty disease. We need to remove it. And it's a little bit like the mammary cancer situation. If we remove it early, it's all good, happy days. If we don't, if we miss it when it first occurs, then it can be spread to other organs, and that's when we have issues and we need to do a lot more to help save your animal's life. So it would be looking at things like chemotherapy, as well as, of course, surgical removal. Now, in saying that, it's a lot harder kind of to tell when testicles have got cancer until it's quite late. Yes, we can palpate them and, do all that sort of stuff, but often we just miss the subtle signs. It's not as easy as it is with mammary cancer to actually tell that there's a problem. Okay, now let's get on to the interesting stuff, shall we? And this is where we get onto the current research and when we actually discuss what's out there at the moment and how that's related to timing of the desexing and whether we should wait or not. And basically, and I'll put a link to this after this with the research study that I'm referring to, but it's a study that was performed by the University of Davis, and it was published what year are we, 21? I think it was published last year, July 2020. Don't quote me on that. And basically, they followed all these dogs, and over quite some time, actually a very long time. So they basically enrolled all these dogs into the study, and I think they actually went over 15 years to actually look at these dogs. So not only did so it's what we call a retrospective study. So basically, they didn't know they were going to do this study. back then, but basically they went back and looked at all the research. They got a whole lot of dogs of all these different breeds, and they basically looked at their health and over a period of 15 years and marked down what things happened during that time. Like, did they get bone disease? Did they get cancer? Did they get urinary incontinence? And they basically followed all these dogs across that period of time. Now, these were all dogs that had visited the University of Davis Veterinary Medical Teaching Hospital in the USA. So one could argue the population is already a little bit skewed. So one, the population is one that's made up of people who have a lot of money, because to go to the University of Davis to get your dog treated for any whatever reason, it's a referral hospital. So it's not like they're going into a GP vet. So that's a number one thing. Number two, they've obviously had issues with their health, and we have to realize that not all the time that's related to desexing. It could be other things that are going on. So we've just got to keep an open mind when we look at these studies, and that goes for any study that we look at, mind you. So there were 35 breeds of dog that they looked at. It ranged from breeds like the Golden Retriever to breeds like Golden Retriever, Labradors, German Shepherds, Border Collies. We had like the Burmese Mountain Dog, Australian Shepherds, English Springer Spaniels, Rottweilers, Toy Poodles, you name it. There were a few breeds which unfortunately we didn't really see. They didn't have anything for breeds like the French Bulldog, which is really common these days. Of course, we didn't have any mixed breeds. So all these oodles that we've got running around these days, there's no research on them. Although we might be able to argue that we go, okay, well, we've got a Cavalier. Let's say we've got a Cavoodle, we've got a Cavalier and a Poodle. So we might be able to see and do some guesswork when we're looking at those sorts of things. So what they were looking at diseases that occurred in these dogs. So we're looking at types of cancers that occurred. So those were cancers like lymphoma, hemangiosarcoma, mast cell tumors, and osteosarcoma. And osteosarcoma is that big, nasty bone cancer. They also had a look at things like mammary cancer, pyo, and urinary incontinence, which was really interesting because a lot of female dogs get urinary incontinence, and we often say it's related to the sex hormones, and that means it's related to the timing of puberty. So it's some really interesting results related to that. They were also really, really interested in the orthopedic diseases. So diseases like cranial cruciate ligament disease, hip dysplasia, and elbow dysplasia. And as I mentioned earlier, those are things that occur really commonly, and they're often a result of breeding. So the breed genetics can definitely play a huge role in that. I think hip dysplasia has got a heritability of something like 60%. So if you know that a parent dog has hip dysplasia, you might want to go elsewhere to get your dog to get a new puppy. But yeah, so they looked at those things. And what they did is they looked at all those diseases and problems over different periods of the dog's lifetime. So they started off, they looked at whether they showed any signs of any of those things at less than 6 months, between 6 months and a year sort of thing, a year to 24 months, and that adult sort of area, 2 to 8 years, and then whether they were left intact at all. And that gave them have a really good basis to make some recommendations. And I think for some dogs, it actually allowed them to look at them right until they were about 11, 12 years old. So it was really, really, really good in that respect. Now, As I said, I'll put the link below because you can go in and have a read yourself of the study, because it would take too long to go through it all. But it was really, really interesting to see what some of the results were. And when we're looking at these, we've really got to take a good and have a good understanding about the risks of individual breeds. So I think one thing that we can basically say, and this is how I would look at, if someone was to come to me now with their dog, I would be looking very closely at what breed it is, so the environment that the dog lives in, and also and your ability as an owner to make sure that they aren't roaming, they can't get pregnant, your willingness to make sure that can happen, because I can tell you it's not easy keeping a female out of trouble. I've had dogs for many years, and actually I had a boyfriend once who we put his but she was a working heading dog. We put her in a stable. We thought the stable door was high enough because it was a really old-fashioned stable that had this really high door. Actually, I'm 5'9", and the stable door was taller than me. Anyway, a dog, we feed her in the morning. Another male dog had actually jumped in, and he was sitting, the two of them were standing there. So guess what? We had puppies. So when I say it can be difficult to keep dogs separate, I understand. And I actually bred my own girl, and I used to share a flat with a friend of mine who had a male Labrador, and beautiful duck hunting male Labrador. And I would keep my girl, who is a fox terrier, in my bedroom. And one day we came and he'd actually dug a hole in the floor under the door. So, yeah, males, when they want it, they're going to leap tall buildings and dig a railway road to it. Yeah, you can't trust them, little buggers. But anyway, I think what we've got to say is that the timing of desexing is 100% dependent on the breed as well as the sex. So we need to make sure that we understand what a particular breed and what their risks are. And yeah, so when we go through all this, for the vast majority of little dogs, you're going to be fine. And when I say little dog, I mean under 15 kgs. You're going to be fine desexing them around that 6 months of age. The vast majority of them, absolutely fine, no issues whatsoever. And I will always recommend that until more research comes out. Oh, and I'll just quickly note, and as I said, I'll cover this. I might cover this in another tutorial. But if your pup is having behavioural issues, there may be sometimes that we actually don't do that, and we won't recommend it. But I'll get to that in another tutorial, because that's quite independent. And that's why I always say that while, yes, we can give advice like this, which is nice and easy, you should always get advice from your own vet, or a vet that's very, or even a vet who just, you can take the time to actually go through your dog's behavior, your environment, your willingness to do things, their breed, and all that sort of stuff. Because there's a lot of stuff that is very, very personal to that dog as well. So, yeah. So basically, if they're a small dog, small breed dog, under 15 kgs, I'm quite happy to be spaying and neutering them at that 6 months of age. Now, there's quite a few breeds that we actually recommend that they get a lot more. We let them mature a bit more, and we're making sure that we desex them closer to the 1 year of age. And then there's those breeds that have the really high risk of cancer. So the golden retrievers, for example, they're one of those breeds. So we've got to think about them, and also those breeds that are really large breed dogs who are more prone perhaps to developing developmental bone problems. So we're talking about things like OCD, osteochondrosis, all those types of problems. And that's where we want them to be very well developed bone-wise. And of course, you need to actually think about your own individual dog. All right, so the ones that we're just going to quickly talk about, golden retrievers. So Goldies, we all know they're a very high-risk cancer breed, and that's pretty much females. The risk is horrifically high for all intact females. And it doesn't matter what time you spay them, whether it's at 6 months or at 5 years, they're going to have, the risk of cancer is really, really high. And it's not always the same cancer either. It's a lot of different cancers. So the recommendation for female golden retrievers is to leave them intact for as long as possible. If you choose to do them, and you really do need to spay them, try and wait it out until after 2 years of age. And I would be looking at having them examined by a veterinarian pretty much every 6 months. They are that prone to cancer. So I'd be really, really careful about them. And that's what's recommended by oncology experts. So I'm not just pulling that out of nowhere. They're a high-risk breed. Now, the males, their risk of joint disease and cancer isn't quite the same as the females, which is really lucky. And this research from this study showed that they are fine to be neutered around that 1 year of age mark. We always kind of think that Labradors are kind of the same as our golden retrievers, but they're actually not. Labradors do, in the study, we do see that there is some protection against all those joint problems that we see, like they tend to be quite prone to those. So there is a little bit of evidence there to say that waiting until they're older than 6 months will help with that. For the males. For the females, it's more about the 1 year of age mark. So 1 year for joints, as well as a little bit to do with that cancer issue as well. Now, boxers, another really, really high risk cancer breed. Major recommendation there is to wait until they have hit 2 years of age. So definitely let them have plenty of time. And same as Cocker Spaniels with the females. So boxers, males and females. Now, really interestingly, one of the breeds that was quite interesting that they talked about was our Springer Spaniels and our West Highland White Terriers. They showed quite a significant decrease in the risk of urinary incontinence if you spayed them after 1 year of age. So they usually come into heat, anywhere from 6 to 8 months. So waiting that little bit of time, spaying them after they've had that heat, has been shown to be protective against that urinary incontinence, which is actually a really good thing. One thing that was quite interesting, and you probably think, oh my God, you've just completely contradicted yourself. In this study, Great Danes did not, and we know that Great Danes are quite prone to cancer and they're quite prone to joint problems, but in this study, there didn't seem to be any greater risk of bone disease or cancer, even if they were dissected early at around 6 months of age. So again, that's a limitation maybe of this study. So definitely talk to your vet, make sure that you're you're looking at your own individual animals and doing some getting the right advice there, because technically we're not seeing a lot of difference. Is it foolproof? Yeah, be wary. Look, I won't go through all the different breeds, because it will take us forever, but those were sort of the main ones. But yeah, we've just got to realize that, as I said earlier, every animal's different. Does your dog's family line have cancer in it? Do they have higher incidence of joint problems, or cruciate disease, things like that? When we see things like that, then we've definitely got to consider basically looking at the individual rather than just looking at the research, because sometimes it's like human bodies. Everything, it's science, things change. This even though this is a really great study with quite a large number of animals, next year another study might come out and it might completely debunk this one. So science is always evolving. We've seen that with COVID, haven't we? So we can't ever draw conclusions based on black and white. There are many shades of grey. All right, let's have a little look-see at some of these questions. And who have we got here? Right, Donna, hello. I had my mini Dachshund done at 8 months. Her doctor said it wouldn't impact her chances for IVDD. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Even though the study didn't do much with, I don't think they did much for this. I'll just have a quick squiz and see whether Dachshunds were in here. I don't think there were actually Dachshunds in this study, but I do, because they didn't actually look at IVDD in this study. What I have actually heard, and would have to double check this because I haven't actually looked, but I've actually heard it's actually 2 years of age that is recommended. Now, that I'm not sure if that's sex dependent. I don't know whether that's female or male. I think we've also got to have a really good look at their family line. So how many animals in that family have had IVDD? Because if that family line is got IVDD all through it, you can nearly be guaranteed that your dog is going to get it too. So yeah, I think we need to actually do a lot more checking of family lines, being more proactive as potential dog owners, and checking out these breeders, making sure that they're doing the right thing, which many of them are. So we're not saying that you're not, but yeah, being really, really, really careful with that respect. Actually, on that note, I do have a free download with how to pick a breeder, what questions to ask, what type of dog you should be getting, all that sort of stuff. So I'll be sure to link that below when I've finished. Okay, Wandilla. Hi, doctor. I'm looking at doing an ovary sparing hysterectomy for my female and a vasectomy on my male, but it seems rare to find a vet that will perform this procedure. Oh, that's a shame. Look, I guess it really just depends where you are and where you're located. I guess these are kind of new procedures as well. Look, they're not new. We've known how to do them forever, but it's not the common thing that we're doing. So just remember, a vasectomy, you're not removing any, and ovary sparing, you're not removing any of those hormones. When you're doing ovary sparing hysterectomies, if you've even got the slightest, tiniest little bit of uterine horn in there, that's the uterus, you can potentially get issues. These surgeries aren't the easiest. They're not actually no no, spaying or neutering surgery is actually easy. Vets subsidize these hugely, like they're serious surgeries, and we just want to see that population control is and managed properly, so we don't do many. So look, I can't really answer why you're struggling to find vets that will do them. Perhaps if you let me know somewhere where you are, and I might be able to suggest a vet if I know of anyone that might be doing that. That might be an idea for you. Right. Let's see. Tam. I'm hearing a lot of talk about breeders waiting for dogs to turn 18 months before this is. Tam, I think we just answered your question. That's what this whole talk was all about. So hopefully I answered that. I will make sure I put the link down below. As I said, it's very dependent on breed of dog. It's dependent on the age of the dog as well. So breed of the dog, and then and sex. Sorry, what was I saying there? So very dependent on breed and sex. So even within a breed, you might have the female needs desexing, it might be earlier or later than the male. So I'll make sure I put the study, I'll link that at the end, and then you can go and have a look. I've also got a handout, a link to an article which you can go and have a look at. I also, if you also want to have a look, I did on the YouTube channel, there's Best Age to Snip Snip, that's me. You might want to check out that video on our YouTube channel, because that talks a little bit more about it as well. Okay. Oh, Donna, another one. So, oh God, your friend has a big rotty girl. She's been advised to wait until 2 years. Actually, rotties were in this study. It'd be worthwhile going and having a look-see at that. I know rotties often do get cancer quite a lot. I'm just having a quick look here if I can see it very quickly. Did I mention Rottweilers? No, I didn't. You'll have to go and have a look at the study and actually just have a look to see what they found. It could, I can't remember off the top of my head what the recommendation is for them, but it's worthwhile just checking out that study. As I said, it's also worthwhile making sure that you don't have other issues, and she's capable of looking after a dog that's not desexed. So lots of things to consider there. They miss Daxies, the horror. Yeah. No, it's the Daxi thing with the IVDD. I'm not sure why they didn't do that. I think there's actually quite a lot of research on that anyway. So it's, you have to have a look. Also, I think some of the things that we've got to be very, very wary about when we're looking at these studies is confidence intervals. So not only the number of animals that were in a study, but the degree of confidence. Sometimes we can have a study that's got 100 animals in it. You think, great, that's a good number, but the confidence interval is really wide, and what that means is we can't make many decisions. So unfortunately, sometimes we need a stats degree just to understand some of these papers, and a lot of them are hard to read. They're not written by people that like talking in layman's terms. I even find it really hard to understand some of these papers. They talk in gobbledygook, and I think that's one of the reasons why we have such a problem with scientific literature these days, and being able to understand things, because a lot of these scientists aren't writing these papers for the general person to be able to understand. I have to say that sometimes I've even given a paper to a friend who's actually an epidemiologist and just said, can you make sense of this, because I can't understand how they got these conclusions, and I'm really concerned. So that's one of the reasons why we've got to be careful sometimes what we hear in the media as well, because it can, unless you know how to read a scientific paper, it can be really hard to understand what is going on. Anyways, guys, I'm getting notes on my computer saying I'm running out of battery, which is kind of weird. But anyways, perfect timing, because it looks like we might be finished anyway. Thank you so much. One of the things that what we'll be doing is doing this every Tuesday at the same time. If you've got questions, make sure, or topics that you want us to cover, make sure you flick us an email. You can send that to customercare@yourvetonline.com, and we'll try and answer some of those questions, and we'll make a little tutorial around something each time. And then once a month, and I'll probably hold these questions until the beginning, first Tuesday of every month, where we just do a free-for-all. So you can either join us or send your questions in, and I'll answer them, and it'll be just a bit of fun. So hopefully you will enjoy that. Remember, if you've ever got a need, you can't get to the vet, perhaps you need a second opinion, or it's something quite small, or you're just a little bit worried about your animals, doesn't matter what kind of animal you've got, yourvetonline.com is available 24/7. We're a group of vets who provide veterinary consults anytime you need us. So head on over to yourvetonline.com and we'll be sure to help you. All right then, guys, I'm Dr. Leigh. We'll catch you next time. Bye for now.